Today on Cinema and Cocktails, Part 2 of Fright Fest continues with two more gems from the genre. The first is a parent's worst nightmare as Colin Farrell and Nicole Kidman star in The Killing of a Sacred Deer, found on Netflix. The second is one of the most tightly wound horror films made in a generation. The Wailing can be found on Amazon Prime. It's Halloween, people, so as always, let's turn off the lights and light a candle like Teddy Pendergrass and watch these movies and make those drinks. If you're a parent or like one of those kind of people that has difficult time watching children suffer and go through difficult circumstances, then this film might not necessarily be for you. All right, it's a tough watch if you have a soft spot for kids. Okay, I'll just leave it at that, because essentially the premise of The Killing of a Sacred Deer revolves around a surgeon who is forced to make a horrible sacrifice / decision after his life begins to fall apart when he begins a relationship or an interaction with a young teenage boy. Starring Colin Farrell, who is from Dublin, Ireland, and happens to be one of Ireland's biggest stars, as well as a big star in Hollywood. He's got 61 acting credits to his name. I first noticed Colin when he was in a small independent film called Tigerland, about like this training base for soldiers before they went off to the Vietnam War. It's very interesting. He was great opposite Tom Cruise in Minority Report, as well as Al Pacino in The Recruit. When he was in Daredevil as Bullseye, I don't know. It just he wasn't as convincing as he was when he was in Burgess, when he was just that complete, intense, and brooding hitman Ray. In the Seven Psychopaths, he was great as Marty. I thought he was uninspired in True Detective when he was that guy, the detective Ray Velacoro. I don't know. I didn't like him very much in that. And then when he was in The Beguiled as Corporal McBurney, I mean, I'll be honest, I didn't see The Beguiled, so I don't know. Now, what I did like about him, though, was I had to check myself when I was watching Horrible Bosses. I did not know I had to really figure out that was him as Bobby Pellet. That was great. So he really stretched. I don't say he stretched himself, but it was neat to see him in such a comedic role, And apparently, he is going to be the Penguin, Oswald Cobblepot, in the next upcoming Batman movie. Are they going to put weight on him, or is he going to wear like a fat guy costume, or is he going to be like a new style Penguin? I don't know, but that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Nicole Kidman, what can I say? She's Hollywood royalty. She's one of the best actresses we've ever gotten from Australia. But, she's actually born in Honolulu, Hawaii, and she has what makes her look such a striking look outside of her height is that, some of her ancestry hails from Ireland, England, and Scotland. So that's where she gets that, that fire red hair and those eyes and that skin. She's got about 87 credits to her name. She really broke through in Days of Thunder when she was opposite Tom Cruise, and another Tom Cruise movie she was in called Far and Away. I thought she was wonderfully duplicitous in Malice opposite Alec Baldwin. And who can forget that icy cold monologue she had about women in Eyes Wide Shut? Oh, man. Whew. She was great in Moulin Rouge. And she was also great in a couple other smaller, independent films. Like one of them was called The Others. Well, Others wasn't independent, but that was a pretty good ghost story, as well as The Human Stain, opposite Sir Anthony Hopkins. She dipped her toe in the superhero pool for a while when she was Atlanta in Aquaman, and was beyond exceptional when she played this really tough yet vulnerable role in Big Little Lies. I mean, I thought she was great. I love the series, part 1 and part 2. I thought Nicole Kidman was fantastic. And more recently, she was also in that movie about the Fox anchors, Bombshell. She played Gretchen Carlson. But, again, she's Hollywood royalty. Barry Keoghan plays Martin, the young guy in this film, the young teenage boy. And he's more of an international star, so I really don't have a lot of information regarding his resume. He was in Dunkirk. And he was in that great TV series. I don't know if you saw it on HBO called Chernobyl. Oh, it was great. And he was also in another touching film about the death of a young one in something called Mammal. So that was interesting to go back and check that out. And also as a prize in a Cracker Jack box, Alicia Silverstone popped up in this movie. What? Yeah, San Francisco's finest with 66 credits to her name. She kind of disappeared, for a while, but she keeps kind of popping up in these kind of similar roles. I didn't know that she was on The Wonder Years. Okay. And I don't think a lot of people know that Crush came out before Clueless. Okay. So she was on her way up. She had kind of did Crush when she was opposite Carrie Elwes as that teenage girl that had that kind of a crush on that reporter. And the next thing you know, she was in Clueless. And it was just kind of rolling. And then after that, she just kind of plateaued. She was the quote unquote white girl in Queen Latifah's beauty shop. She was in the Babysitter's Club, a television series. And apparently, I heard they were going to do this, but I don't know. I guess I didn't want to believe it. But apparently they're doing a live action Masters of the Universe, like He-Man, I guess. I blown away. But apparently she's playing Queen Marlena. Now, I'm dating myself, but for those of you that actually watched He-Man back in the day, Queen Marlena is the mother of Princess Adora and Prince Adam, the guy who turns into He-Man. But yeah, you know what? Let me stop right there. The arcs of these wonderful characters. Stephen Murphy is a doctor, and he's a very good doctor, but I'm sorry about that. And Murphy's played by Colin Farrell. Stephen Murphy's a good doctor, okay, but for whatever reason, he cannot figure out what is wrong with his son. And it's kind of hard to describe his arc as anything but a negative one, because he kind of starts out kind of cool and collected and understanding, constantly referring to the science to guide his decisions. But as the film carries on, I don't want to say he becomes unhinged, but it's almost like he becomes more and more irrational and trying to figure out a way to save his family and to save his kids. And as any father would do or mother would do in those kind of situations, his very stoic demeanor, it kind of entails a man that, when he's trying to diagnose the problem, you figure that he's seen everything under the sun when it comes to ailments, but for some reason he cannot control the circumstances that have befallen his family. Now, his arc is reflected by his wife, Anna Murphy, played by Kidman, who, she's your typical mother type, but she too is also flummoxed by the events surrounding her children's illnesses. But she plays it a little bit differently. She takes on a little bit more of an empathetic and patient stance, but she becomes even aggressive as she begins to put the pieces of the puzzle together regarding the forthcoming tragedy and what has happened, which kind of set these things in motion. Now, Martin, who's a teenage boy that kind of, becomes connected to Stephen Murphy, his arc is flat, but it's flat for a reason. And it's kind of hard to tell if he is just unknowingly shallow, awkward, depraved, or if he's a sociopath. It's really weird to kind of read him. His demeanor and his mannerisms are making very difficult to kind of figure out. And all I know is that he doesn't really change at all. He's the same guy in the beginning of the movie as he is at the end of the movie. Now, what makes this film so unsettling is the dialogue. I mean, it's just strange. I mean, it is strangely direct. And each scene begins, it's like you're sitting there looking at the two having a conversation and you don't know what the heck is going to come out of anybody's mouth. There is no ebb. There is no flow to the conversations. Things just seem to be almost blurted out in the most obscure and strange style. What makes it even more strange is how the characters react to each other when some of these weird things are said. As far as subtext goes, there really isn't any subtext involved in this. I mean, these guys say what they mean and they mean what they say, but it's like it seems awkward and forced, but it's done artistically in a way to make you sit there and look at the way the characters interact and be like, what is going on here? And why is this happening? Like, you're constantly questioning things as far as how these conversations go inside these scenes. Now, what exactly is this story about? I looked at it from three different angles. I looked at it as a human. I thought it was a human versus himself, more of a human versus human kind of thing going on, and a human versus the supernatural. One of these characters, which I'm not going to reveal to you right now, is fighting against a mistake or decision that they made. Okay. And also the subsequent cover up that has kind of set these things in motion. The other one is the kind of human versus human thing, because there's so much tension between characters about how to handle the fallout, what's happening. I mean, the family seems to be perfectly in order, and now something is really testing their fragile existence. As far as the supernatural goes, I don't know what is plaguing this family, where it came from, or who is behind it. All I know is that it's coming, and apparently one of the other characters knows it's coming as well. Okay. And so that kind of lends itself to the plot type. It's a why done it versus a who done it versus a what done it. I mean, once you learn about the why, your mind then kind of shifts towards the who. Like, who is behind the suffering? Who begat this situation that is causing the Murphy family to go through so much pain? And, what is it? And I think that's also what's interesting, because it's the irony of this guy being this fantastic doctor who cannot diagnose the affliction of his family. It's perfect tragedy. It's just tragic, Thematically, I thought there were, four major themes in this movie, but I can't really talk about them without giving away the plot. So I'm going to kind of pass on that. But there's definitely redemption. There's some vengeance in there. Their sacrifice and fate are pretty much all wrapped up in them. All right. And they all revolve around Stephen and Martin. Now, the structure of the film, I thought, was a little bit imbalanced. Okay. If you're watching it for the first time, you got to give it a chance, because the first act is really, really long. Okay. It's like it really slowly takes its time setting itself up, to try to get you interested in it. So when you're sitting here waiting for it to happen. And, then it's like, as the movie begins to progress along, then you begin to find out what's going on. So it's like in the first act is the introduction to Martin and Stephen's life and how they relate to one another. Then you learn about Martin's weird ways and his sayings in the second act. And about midway through is the rationalization of whatever it is that's afflicting the family. And then finally into the third act, the decision has to be made about what to do and how to handle this situation. The director for this is a guy named Yorgos Lanthimos. All right. And he's known for such films as The Favorite, The Lobster, and Dogtooth. So when it comes to these kind of quirky kind of stories, he's kind of good at this, right? The Lobster is a weird story about people being forced to get together. And if they don't, kind of find a mate or a spouse, they get turned into creatures and then get sent out into the wilderness. Dogtooth is another story about parents who won't let their kids go out until their dog tooth falls out of their mouth. So like the killing of a sacred deer is kind of like right up this guy's alley. From a cinematography standpoint, the angles in this movie, the way they're shot is also kind of strange and unsettling as the movie itself. Lots of these really broad, wide angle shots, almost from like a fisheye perspective. I mean, it really gives each scene a sense of isolation. Close-ups are used for emotion, but what's strange about that is that the characters are seemingly emotionless at times, which made some scenes uncomfortable. But stylistically, I kind of enjoyed the way they kept kind of panning out and letting you see everything that's happening in a particular scene. Now, what worked for me in this movie, because I like movies like this, what worked for me was the plot's slow development. Okay, it's really a slow burn. It's almost like, I think most people have a slow cooker in their house, right? And when you have a slow cooker, when you first put the food in there, right, you just kind of turn it on, you can't smell anything. You even like walk past it to make sure the thing is on. Did I plug it in right? Is it on? But all of a sudden you start to smell what's cooking all throughout the house, right? And then you start getting anxious because you want to hurry up and finish. And then finally the alarm goes off, ding, and you lift the lid and the smell comes out and damn, it's good. And that's to me the way what this movie is. It's kind of like a dish in a slow cooker. It's like you put it in there for